Okay, let's get to the questions. We're going to have students working with me? Great. And if somebody could give me my lemonade or give me some lemonade or something for my throat, I'd really appreciate it. All right? Mm-hmm. Great audience, by the way. My architecture student educator, did I do okay? Did I do okay? All right, okay. Thank you, cabinet. My kitchen cabinet, they're with me, yeah. Okay. Uh-huh.
How about another round of applause?
Thank you.
My name is John Anderson. I'm the director for the Ryan Family Scholars Program and Teachers College Scholarship Program for teaching majors. And we have 3 of our scholars who will be a part of a panel and do some Q&A with Dr. Hrabowski. I'm encouraged in several ways tonight, and you've confirmed for me that I can still be a preacher and a college administrator. And we talked about that a little bit briefly.
Right.
And I appreciate how I told Dr. Hrabowski about a week ago when we were preparing for tonight that I was going to close open gym at the middle school I coach at in Northside and invite all of the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who are trying to prepare for tryouts, invite them to dinner with me and hear Dr. Hrabowski tonight. And so we've had 2 join us tonight from Northside Middle School out of about, 24, 25, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. So how about a hand for them?
Yeah. And they were listening. I was with their eyes. I mean, Bryson and Eska, y'all did really well. You really did. Better than my grandson would do. Very well. Because my grandson would say, okay, enough, Papa, enough. Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Absolutely. And so I want to welcome 3 of our scholars. I'll call them up individual by name, and they'll take their place on the platform. They've had some questions that they've prepared, and then hopefully that will lead off into questions from the larger audience as well.
Yep.
First up, he was a part of our first cohort of scholars when we started in the fall of 21. Our program is entering into its 4th academic year. Isaiah Kemp, secondary education, social studies.
Social studies.
And then 2, I believe they were part of the same cohort, and that was in year 2. First off, we have Jamie Johnson Harris, is it Oak Park, Illinois? Orland Park, Illinois. Come on up, Jamie.
Oh, you have shirts too. Yeah.
And that's
Very
elementary education and
Elementary
that's
education.
it? I can't add another one on?
That's enough, yeah.
And then finally, but not least, Jocelyn Valdez Salinas. Come on up, Jocelyn.
Great.
She's going to be mic too. And Jocelyn, I know that you have more than one. Is that right?
Elementary and special ed.
Yeah, I knew it.
Elementary and special.
Elementary education and special education.
Very nice. Okay.
All right.
Great.
And
when we finish with them, my architect students have questions too. They are preparing something for me. I know that. All right, go right ahead. After you all finish. Let's go. Great. Who starts?
I guess I'll start. Well, first, let me say it's very much an honor to be here with everybody, especially to be here with you. Dr. A presented this opportunity to me, I want to say about a month ago when he found out that you were coming. And I was like, okay, Dr. A wants me to go. I got to set time aside. And then he sent me your TikTok, and I watched it, and I was like, okay, I have to go. I have to meet this man. He's the president. He's done so much. Well, he's the president of university. He's made a name for himself. I just found out you marched with Martin Luther King. Like that's history, and I'm a history teacher, so I'm all in for it. I'm very inspired. I'm honored. One of my questions is, as mentioned, you've put out the most people of color, for MDs and doctorates. Like in the mix of all of that, I heard you say like one of the classrooms weren't big enough. Other than that, what were some of the biggest and like I want to say some of the biggest hurdles and challenges to come with it as far as dealing with the staff who were teaching students, dealing with some of the students who may not have been happy to have certain classmates, or certain challenges that you might have faced?
So there are two challenges I would bring up. One is that we were working to give our Malhoff Scholars, if you look at the program, which started for African Americans and now has maybe 60% students of color, and the other 40% are white and Asian students, groups that are well represented in the disciplines, but who have an interest in becoming professors who work with kids of all backgrounds. You get the idea? And that's where we have to go in our country, that we need people from all backgrounds talking about the issue of underrepresentation. But one of the big challenges was we were trying to figure out how to help first some blacks to get at least a B in upper level science courses. We'd never had anyone in the university get at least a B. And if you go back and look at your own records, you will, at any university, it's very hard to find students of color who've gotten at least B's in upper level science courses. When you do find it, often their parents are from other countries. They had a French education or British education. But from this country, it's still the case that most places haven't done it. And so we needed to do a lot to push these students, to expect a lot, but to give them a lot of support. Well, to my surprise, the group that got most upset without doing it became the other black students. They said, it's not fair that you got these students who did well in high school, and now you're giving them special support. It's not fair that you got money to help them out. I said, well, we're helping you too, but you make them feel really prestigious. And I got that. And so I asked one question. Does it bother you that we make the basketball team feel really prestigious? Because athletes on any campus get a lot of special support. And I'm not saying they shouldn't, but no one ever questions the excitement, the thrill of supporting athletes in our society, on our campuses. But as soon as you talk about supporting people who may become the very best in science, and then we got a humanities program did the same thing, people want to know, why are you making them feel special? And I had to explain to them that it had everything to do with values. They didn't mind our making the men's basketball team feel like little kings. But when it came to the little kids that they call nerdy, they really didn't think we should be doing it. So we had to have very challenging conversations with them. And the other one was when the students began to do well, when we first got our first students making B's and then A's in genetics and organic chemistry, I had faculty who came to me and said, this is not fair. And these are not racist, these are liberal people. I said, well, what's not fair about it? Well, you must be giving them some special opportunity to do this. And I said, well, our Asian students always get A's. You've never questioned a lot of Asian students getting A's. Why does it bother you that black kids are getting A's? And they really had to think about it. I said, because I'm the president, and yeah, I'm helping with the program, but I don't know chemistry. I'm not doing anything special to help them out. So we had to look at our culture. If people are not accustomed to seeing a group excel, when we would take the students to a special dinner or something, first year we had all black males, because Mr. Meyerhoff, who is Jewish and is now 100, still working with the program, he wanted to see what we could do to help boys of color, because in any school system, the boys of color tend to be the ones who are in the assistant principal's office first with some challenge. In California, wherever you go, the boys of color. Now we've got boys of color, and we got white boys not doing well either, but I'm just saying. And he wanted to see what we could do with that group. Then we brought in women and other groups. And the point is, when we first brought the boys into a dinner with shirts and ties on, people just knew they had to be athletes. And I said, no, they're here because they're working to get A's in physics. And people just look at you like you're crazy, because we're not accustomed to think. When we think about first-rate scientists, how many of you think about a black woman? No, we think about old white guys with white hair. Not even women. This is why we have the advanced program on our campuses these days, because we still haven't done enough to support more women in computer science and other areas. So expectations, really. By the way, how many of you took the Moderna vaccine? Anybody take the Moderna vaccine, COVID vaccine? That vaccine was discovered by the NIH team that was led by one of my students, the first black woman in the world to create a vaccine. Her name is Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. She's still in her 30s, all right, from a little country town in North Carolina. And here she is. Give her a round of applause, Dr. And when she was on Anderson Cooper's, if you go look up her name, of course, Kizzmekia Corbett, C-O-R-B-E-T-T, before the vaccine came out, she was on Anderson Cooper, and they got so many calls and letters from people who thought it was some kind of hoax. They couldn't believe that it was a black woman who was leading the effort, because we haven't seen it. That's the idea. Go look at that interview with Anderson Cooper and Kizzmekia. Great question, okay? Next question.
Hello. Is it on? Yeah. Okay. So again, I just have to say, I can't believe you got to march with MLK, and I actually found out about that before coming here because Dr. Anderson shared a video with me, and I got to watch that and learn about that and a little bit more about your childhood.
Thank you.
So, yeah. So after watching, marching with MLK and experiencing those discriminatory events, my question would be like, at that young age of 12, what was your next steps moving forward, and how did you achieve success, and like what goals did you have like after that?
Sure, and this is good for Hezekiah and Bryson at your age and then college students. So the one part I didn't tell was that when I was marching, and if you look at that book I wrote, Holding Fast to Dreams, on civil rights participation and producing scientists, I tell the story that we got up from the church, we marched over to City Hall, and I happened to be in the front of my part of the line then, and Bull Connor was the police commissioner. And he looked down at me and he said, "What do you want?" The word they would use is Negro. It's between Negro and the other word. And I was so scared. I was so scared, Bryson, this guy. My knees were shaking, all right? This big white guy's looking down at me. "What do you want?" And I said, "Sir, we want to kneel and pray for a better education." That's all we wanted, was to pray for a better education. And he was so angry that he went, and he spat in my face. He did. And he picked me up and threw me into the police wagon, okay? And for years, I hated that man. And when he died, my mother called me, and she was crying. And I said, "Mother, why would you cry? He was mean to me." And she said this. She said, "I cry because he was somebody's child. And I'm so sorry that his mother didn't teach him not to hate. That his mother didn't teach him to look beyond the color of somebody's skin." And before I knew it, she had me crying. I was angry at her for not taking my side, but she said, "Son, don't ever hate the person. Maybe you hate what the person did, but feel sorry for the person who would hate children," you see. And it was a cathartic experience for me. This was 5 years later. It cleansed me, because anytime we hate anybody, it eats on the inside. This is about this time about the democracy and both sides. We don't need to be hating people because they vote for somebody else. No, that doesn't help a thing. There are reasons people vote for whomever they do. We have to understand those reasons and see how we can support them. And I say this especially for teachers and professors. And so from that period on, I was determined to help more people get a good education. Because when I was in the jail with the kids, most of the kids in jail were from the projects. And they couldn't read well. And let me tell you, you'll appreciate this. The bad boys were beating us up for my 13 years in there. They were beating up kids. And I had figured out a system. They had the one book they had in jail everywhere were Bibles. You know, in the South, we got those Bibles. So I was teaching my little kids. I was working with some kids younger than me. And they were young, and I was 12, but I was going to the 9th grade. And I'll never forget it. Actually, I was getting ready to go to 10th grade. It was May. And the fact is, so I was more mature. I would be giving them scripture, and they would quote after me. And at nighttime, the boys would come over, getting ready to beat the boys up. Okay? And I would start saying, the Lord is my shepherd. And the kids would say, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. And somehow the bad boys were scared of God. And so they wouldn't bother. As long as we were saying scripture, they would not bother us. Okay? But what I saw when I had them read was they couldn't read. They could not read well. And it was just another sign for me, I've got to do something about this reading and math, you know. And so I always wanted to do that. And then later on, because I love math, what I realized was learning math is a part of the civil rights movement, which people think about the social sciences and humanities, but it's hard if you don't know fundamental math. You can't do your taxes. You don't know change, you know, any of that. And so I began thinking about how do I use this love of math. And that's when I got into, well, we don't have many doctors. We don't have many scientists. And that's when they got into that. Okay? That was it. Thank you. Okay? Last question. Just talk. Mm-hmm.
Oh. Okay, so first I want to say thank you for allowing me to sit next to you and being able to do a Q&A about your whole life experience and stuff. I just want to say my question is, what is one piece of advice that you could give to future educators that are working with children from all different backgrounds and incorporating diversity in the classroom?
Yes, excellent question, excellent question. So I would say this to teachers in pre-K through 12 and to professors and educators, that we first must know ourselves. You all know that. We must know ourselves, our strengths, our challenges. Everybody still has challenges. We must know ourselves. And we must think about our vision of ourselves and of those whose lives we will touch. Okay? I got this from both my parents who were educators, and my dad left education to work in a steel mill because he could make more money than he could as a teacher. And so he would work with the men of color to help them get ready for the GED. And then my mom worked at night teaching math and English to GED students after teaching math and English during the day. But they always had this vision for their students to help them, again, to believe in themselves by showing them that you believe in yourselves. Children watch teachers. Hezekiah and Brenton are looking at me, you know, and I am so amazed that these 13-year-olds are still connected with me. I mean, it's a big deal. Give them one more round of applause to my 13-year-olds. It really is. It's a big deal. They still are there. It's amazing. What I'm saying is, though, and then the other part is, I want us to work to not be boring. Kids and people can get bored. You know, if you don't spice it up, if you don't ask good questions, if you don't keep looking at them, right, in different ways. I've got somebody here from IU who is so excited about her civic project in virtual reality. She keeps telling me, best in the world. She keeps beating me up with that. Wait a minute. But I love it, that passion. That's the word. I'm going to take it from you, that we must have passion. You know, where would anybody here be if you hadn't gotten an education? Think about it. What would you be doing if you hadn't gotten that education? My mother always said, education transforms lives. And she always said, they may pay teachers less, but we teach them all. The doctors and the lawyers and anybody, they come through the teachers. And a lot of children, you heard this from Jason, a lot of children didn't have necessarily a loving home because of all kinds of problems. And if it is not for a teacher, the child is doomed. So what you do as teachers is life and death. Let me tell you one final thing. Most of the children who marched with me in 1963 are dead. In fact, when Spike Lee did this movie, 30 years after that in 1997, and he looked for kids, many of them were dead in their 50s and 40s. But today, the only people who live to be old guy like me are people who've had some privilege, who get a good job, who can get the health care, who learn you don't smoke. Although, you get what I'm saying? So, I mean, it's so sad to think about all the kids you saw marching. Most were from poverty, and they are now dead. Now, that can depress me, or I can use it to inspire me. I choose to be inspired, to say, I want the children you teach to be elevated and inspired to believe, I can do this. I can do this. I mean, if you don't get anything else from the night, it is that idea of how we think about the work we do as professors and teachers. And that's why, Dr. Roof, the work you're doing in civic engagement, to have partnerships between the schools and the university and with teachers and children and families. And as we think about the fundamental, this ineluctable question, who will lead the country to believe that education for all of our children is important? I don't want to tell anybody who to vote. I want to tell them to think about their values. Who do you see that will be believing that our working class families have a chance to keep moving up with education? Because we don't even hear about education in the debates and everything now. Think about it. We're not even, because of all the other stuff that's going on, you don't hear even people talking about no child left behind or anything. And I am somebody who knows how to be bipartisan. I can go and work with many Republicans behind the scenes in D.C. to get things done, all right? I grew up with Condi Rice. Some of you know who Condi Rice is. She lived around the corner. Her dad was my high school counselor, all right? And so I got to know the Bush family well. I'm a Democrat, but I got to know them well, and very decent people. You get my point? And so we need our teachers, you all, to see yourselves as the very future of our society, because you're teaching those people, okay? How much do we have time for more questions from them, or do it to the audience? It's up to you.
I think, do you have another question?
It was just more like a clarification. So when I was younger, we read a book called Washington Goes to Birmingham.
Yes.
By raise of hands, how many people have read the book or watched the movie? Oh, okay. Oh, wow. All right. So in the book, this family, they do end up going to Birmingham. While there's the church that explodes, and I believe it kills 3 or 4 girls. Is that the church that you're replying to?
Yes. In fact, and this, I want my 13-year-olds to hear this, because it's how graphic it is. One of the girls, as I say in the movie, look at the movie, 4 Little Girls. You'll see me throughout it. One of the girls was in my class. And she said to me that Friday, as we were leaving, running away from the school, she said, "See you Monday." The last thing she ever said to me, "See you Monday." And when that church was bombed, my church was a sister church. Actually, there was a vibration. And somebody gave a note to the minister, and very calmly he said, 16th Street Baptist has been bombed. And everybody just, because daughters and mothers, sisters, the families were split between the 2 churches. Oh my God. And the women and children went home, the men went over there, and they were looking to find people, and they found more and more people, and finally they found the first girl. It turned out 4 little girls who dressed in white were going to be ushers that day in church, had gone to the restroom in the basement and were there by the commode primping and laughing. How could they know that the bomb was behind the commode? And they were blown to pieces. And for all of our childhood, we saw that. It was like war. And we were so scared even to go to church. Because if you can't be safe in church, where can you be safe? And the youngest of the 4, who was 11 or 12, her dad had given her a ring that morning. And they couldn't find her first. They found the hand. All the children of Birmingham had nightmares about that hand. And yet, what did we learn? That we can't just immerse ourselves in the gory details, though they are graphic. It is that we didn't want them to have died in vain. I wanted to live my life to say, I'm succeeding for you all. Children in Birmingham, Condi Rice and others said, we're going to succeed for them because they didn't get the chance to show what they could have been a Secretary of State. But we will live our lives for them. And that's the message for all of us in a democracy, that tragedies do occur. And we can either be victims or we can decide, no, what do we learn from this to elevate ourselves? I did not come here to depress you. I came here to say We must be elevated to use civic engagement and all of our disciplines from architecture to education to make a difference, to say, we can do this. We can make it better for all of us. That must be the message. And now I want a question from the architects. May I get a question from them? But first of all, will you give these students a round of applause over here? They were great, really great. They're going to be such great teachers. Stay here with me, stay here with me, stay here with me. Go ahead. You're my posse.
have a question?
Come on, question from the architects. Who goes? Good, good. Was it Ellen? Go ahead,
Yes, it's Ella. Nice.
Hi, Ellen.
Good to talk to you again.
Yes.
I do have a quick question, and just keeps bringing, even before we were speaking to now and after you spoke and everything, going back to the architecture and design aspects.
Yes.
How can we use architecture with higher education to encourage minorities, Black, Hispanics, Asians, like all of us? How can we encourage us to succeed in higher education? Because we see a lot of dropouts.
Yes.
I am first generation because my mother went to school, but she never got to succeed.
Yes.
My father never got the chance to even go. He just applied. And so how can we, all of us in all of our different career choices, encourage one another and those who have not been encouraged yet to carry through all the way and be that first generation?
Give her a round for the applause, for the round of applause. So first, I want everybody in here who's first generation college to stand. If you're first generation college, stand, and let's give everybody a round of applause when they're first generation college. And the reason I say that is it's only been in more recent years that we as Americans have come to appreciate that as a source of pride. I've had college presidents. The last dean of Harvard Medical said to me, should I tell people I'm a first-year college person? Because people in certain settings can be so condescending towards other people, as you know. But I always want at graduations, I want the first generation people to stand, because you represent hope for so many other people. What percent of Americans do you think in the mid-60s had graduated from college, in the mid-60s, in general? What do you think? What percent of American families had somebody to graduate from college in the mid-60s? I heard 10 from somebody, 15, 20. Now, how many of you don't know? Okay? It was only 10%. Very good. But what percent of whites? I can tell you only 3% of blacks, 2%, they were almost all from HBCUs for the most part, 1 or 2 in northern states. But what percent of whites do you think in 1963 or 4 had graduated from college? I heard 90%. You think a lot of white people. That's amazing. That's a joke. That's a joke, folks. That's a joke. Somebody else. Who else? I heard 90%? 12? What percent? 60%? Anybody else? It was only 11%. People think of all whites as being privileged. No, no. 90% of white families, 89%, had never seen anybody graduate from college in 1989, in 1963, 64. It was that Higher Education Act, and then the Pell Grant, right? In fact, who do you think, even with remember the GI Bill? You've heard of the GI Bill when veterans went to college, they started in the 40s. Who do you think fought the GI Bill? They said, if you allow veterans into our universities, they will become, quote, academic hobo jungles. University presidents, that's exactly it. Beginning with the most prestigious of all, the president of Harvard and the president of the University of Chicago. Were they bad people? No, they were products of their childhood experiences. And they thought college was for those who were privileged to be rich. They thought that people who were from working class families should stay and should become tradespeople. Nothing wrong with the trades, but they did not think they were worthy of a college education. But Roosevelt fought them, and he was called the enemy of his class for doing it, all right? Because of the Social Security Act and then the GI Bill. And within several years, 2 million veterans had gotten into college. Now, most were white guys, but there were a few blacks and a few women, okay? And they did well. And people saw them doing well. So by the 60s, people said, well, maybe regular people can go to college. Okay? Now, here's the final question of this. What percent today of Americans have somebody in their family who's graduated from college? What percent would you say? What percent of Americans over 25 have graduated from college? What do you think? I heard 20%? 40? 60? 30? 25, I feel like the auction guy. Going once, going twice. I know. It's about a third. Now, break it down by race. What's the fastest growing group in our country? Fastest growing group in our country? Latinos. Yes, yes. And what percent of Latinos have graduated from college? Just up to 20%. That's why Latino teachers are so important. Because a part of the answer, whether it's architects or teachers, people need to see people like themselves. It's so important for women to see women to say, I can do this, okay? And then, wait a minute, let me finish. For blacks, the percentage, I'll tell you, is up to now almost 30%. What percent of whites have graduated from college? I heard 40, 30, 50. Don't be risk adverse. Come on, try. See, y'all accustomed to getting the answer and then hollering and not being smart. I know. Who else? Whites. Huh? 45. 35. Going once, going twice. 50. It's actually about 40%. Okay? And then what is the best educated in terms of level of attainment of education in our country? Asians. All right. Normally somebody says black women. I always get that answer from somebody, black women, right? I love that confidence. It's wrong, but I like that confidence, right? But the fact is, look at this. They are at about 55%. Because many of my students are of Asian background. Many are the children of people who come here to grad school. You see, that's, But here's the point. Today, then, with all of what I said, 2/3 of American families have still not ever seen anyone graduate from a four-year institution. Now, when I say that to my friends of any race, you know what they say? Freeman, that couldn't be true. Everybody I know has a college degree. Duh. Teachers are around teachers. Lawyers are around lawyers. Doctor, you're around people kind of like you. But plumbers make a good living. You get my point? There's nothing wrong. And let me say this. 40% of all American students start in community college. Give community colleges a round of applause. They do a good job. And so my answer to you, with all of that said, is we've got so much room to develop mindset that whatever you are, an architect, a teacher, a whatever, first of all, being somebody who's accessible, being somebody who knows how to be down to earth and to help people who have not gone to college and children to know she's okay. She's okay. And then being able to tell your story. I want each of you to tell your story. How did you get into architecture? What do you need to know to go into architecture? How do architects use their work? And then your point about architecture and higher education. I've worked with so many architects. We were really fortunate in my time there to do about $1 billion of construction. So I was always working with architects. And what I loved was their emphasis on inclusive community, on creating spaces that would encourage conversations, all right? On coming up with structures that allowed for interpretation, that combine some of the public money we have for art with the architecture of the place for the aesthetic value, for the notion that in one case, a structure that's made out of the red land soil. Because around the world, there are parts of the world where the soil is not black, but it's red, for example, okay? In my state in Alabama, down in Wetumpka, it's red. It's called Redland Road. All of it's red. And as the architect was working with this artist, they wanted to create spaces around it where people could have conversations about dirt and about the aesthetic value of what they had there. And so I would say to you two things. One, on the structures of campuses and softening. We went through a period in architecture, as you know, where things were stark. As I said, State University of New York is very stark, very without feeling and compassion, robot-like, you know? And then secondly, though, to encourage people, girls, boys, all races, especially first-generation college, to look at the possibilities. Because most have never heard of architecture. They have no, just as only 20% of computer science majors are women, as I said, okay? But every time you speak, you are leading. you're leading. And this is what I would say to higher education. We are far too condescending. Even I tease my friends at MSNBC. One of my fellow Hamptonians is the president of MSNBC, black woman. But I'm saying, you know, we always laugh or talk about another station, but we need to look in the mirror at itself at MSNBC, because while there may be much truth, there is a condescension. I tease Joy because she's always mentioning that she went to Yale. They're always talking. The Ivies are like that. You know, when you get to New England, if anybody's from New England, you know the older the institution, the larger the endowment, the more condescending. I teach at Harvard, and believe me, I mean, even journalists from Tufts said, you know, you're right, because those of us at Tufts get a little embarrassed when we're with people from Harvard. People think that way. The Midwest is much better about not worrying about that class thing so much. But what I'm saying, we still do this, though. Like the East Coast and the West Coast look down on the Midwest. You know, illogically, they do, all right? And I would say for all of us who are educated in the profession, the first thing, what I want to do when I'm going into a school to talk with 13-year-olds, or when I go to the Eastern Shore of Maryland and most people are poor, I want them to know, yeah, that I grew up in Birmingham, but would go down to Wetumpka, and in some places they still had outhouses. Yeah, you know, that I know what it means to pick cotton. You know, so I'm saying, as you become a professional, don't lose the common touch. Keep remembering that so many people have not had the blessings, the benefit you have. That would be my message. Okay? Yes. Hi.
So I'm really delighted to hear you and impressed, and want to send accolades for the work you did with STEM and
Thank you.
UMC.
UMBC? Uh-huh.
But I want to say, I want you to lift up some of the work that Student Affairs and the Center for Democracy and Civic Life have done in helping to lead the nation in higher education around civic agency.
Yes, I love that.
Student empowerment.
Yes, I can do that.
David Hoffman.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it.
And the presidents.
Yes,
And they all set a role model for what students could be.
Yes,
Cognitively,
Yes.
intellectually, but also civically.
yes,
Also building a
Yes.
powerful body
Yes.
of students who can make change.
yes. I love his point was that there's more to be said from my level here right now, and I absolutely agree. I really do. The fact is that, first of all, even when talking about my STEM students, we had them integrated into our Center for Civic Engagement. And we have it in that book. If you look in the Empowered University, you will see a chapter on civic engagement. And those kids work with first-time offenders. We work with 500, mainly boys, some little girls in gangs, but mainly boys, mainly of color, but some low-income white kids who have gotten into trouble with the law. And some are as young as 9 and 10. And we go to court with them and say to the judge with the grandmother often, please don't put them in jail. Let them come into the choice program, okay? And when they come into the choice program, the idea is you have a choice. You either go to jail or you come into this program. You still go to your school, but we will work with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we make sure they're up in the morning, they're in school during the day. We bring them on campus in the evenings to play basketball and to do some work, okay? And we take them back home, okay? And we'll do that for up to a year. And then watch them to try to make sure they don't get into trouble again. If we don't do it, they go into jail. If they go to jail, they get harder. They come out and they do worse. All right, now this is one example, the choice program. But all of these programs, for whatever you'll see it in the books, he's absolutely right. If you read the books, you'll see for my humanities scholars, for the science scholars, for the arts scholars, civic engagement is a requirement. And it was such a requirement for my students who were in the scholars program that now students in general, it's expected. It's expected that they will get involved in the Shriver Center and what we do with civic engagement. And David Hoffman led that effort in a beautiful way. And what it does is this. It means whether you're going to be an engineer or a teacher, you need to understand the societal problems. You need to see, especially when thinking about children from all kinds of backgrounds, you need to understand more about senior citizens and the rights they have. And so some will work with senior citizens in the seniors' home, others work with children, others work with battered women. But understanding the societal problems will make you a better professional in whatever you're doing. So give him a round of applause for that point. It's an excellent point. It's an excellent point. And there's no way we can make it as a society if people from the different professions don't get involved as adults. And the best way to get involved as an adult is to start when you're in college, if not high school, because then you know how to do it. It's absolutely right. Absolutely right. I appreciate you telling me. Absolutely right. Very much so. Thank you very much. And what was nice was he didn't say, you didn't talk about it. He just encouraged me to do it. It was wonderful. Thank you for your approach, too. I appreciate that. All right, next question, please. Last question. Do I have time for one last one? We're out of time. All right, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Stand up. You got to do this. Here we go. Repeat after me. Thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. Now you're sounding like wimps, all right? This time, I want you to say it the way you would at a football game or basketball. You got it? I want you to say it and mean it, all right? Thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. All right, here we go. Watch your thoughts, they become your... and there's my last point. You must not only have passion, you must be mindful. Think of it as a test. So you got to memorize it as I'm saying it. Got it, guys? Memorize it, and then we'll say it, okay? Thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. Okay, watch your thoughts, they become your... Watch your words, they become your... Watch your actions, they become your... Watch your habits, they become your... Watch your character becomes your... Round of applause for you all. Thank you. Thank you. Needed to be said. Thank you very much. Give me that elbow. That was excellent. Tell me your name. Tell me that you are...